They say blood is thicker than water. What they don't tell you is that sometimes blood can poison you from the inside out, and the only way to survive is to cut yourself free. My name is Tahlia, and this is the story of how I learned that family isn't always the people who share your DNA. Sometimes, it's the strangers who hold your hand when your own flesh and blood won't even stay to watch you fight for your life. The fluorescent lights in the hospital corridor buzzed overhead like angry wasps as I lay on the gurney, staring at the sterile white ceiling tiles. Each one had tiny perforations, thousands of little holes that reminded me of the emptiness I felt inside. The anesthesia hadn't kicked in yet, but I already felt numb. Not from the medication they were about to pump into my veins, but from the conversation I'd just overheard outside my room. "Will the family be waiting in the surgical waiting room?" Maria, my nurse, had asked in her gentle Latina accent. She was the kind of person who brought an extra blanket without being asked, who remembered that I liked my water with just a little ice. "No need," came my father's cold, clipped voice from the hallway. Richard Blackwood always spoke like he was addressing a board meeting, even in hospitals. "Blair needs to get to her final dress fitting at the bridal boutique downtown. The wedding planner is meeting us there at 3. This takes precedence." I heard my mother Caroline's laugh, that tinkling sound I used to think was musical when I was little. Now it sounded like breaking glass. You know how dramatic she can be. Getting cancer right during Blair's engagement season? The timing is just so inconvenient for everyone. My younger sister Blair's voice drifted in next, barely looking up from her phone screen. "God, can she hurry up with this whole thing? I don't want her dying in there and ruining my day. Today is supposed to be about me." The words hit me like physical blows. I'd known my family was selfish, had felt the sting of being the overlooked middle child my entire life, but this was beyond anything I'd imagined. Here I was, about to undergo surgery to remove a tumor from my ovary, and they were discussing wedding dresses. Through the small window in my room door, I could see them clearly. Dad in his tailored navy suit, the same one he wore to important client meetings. Mom in her cream-colored Chanel dress, pearls gleaming at her throat. Blair in a designer outfit that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent, her blonde hair perfectly styled, even though it was barely 10 in the morning. They looked like they were heading to a country club luncheon, not sending their daughter into surgery. "Here's the final payment for your insurance coverage," Dad said, walking into my room and dropping a manila envelope on the hospital bed like it was contaminated. "After today, you're on your own financially. We can't let your condition affect our business partnership with the Prescott family. The merger depends on this wedding going smoothly." My throat constricted. Not from fear of the surgery, but from the casual cruelty in his voice. I was 26 years old, had been working as a junior marketing coordinator to pay my own bills. But the insurance was still under the family policy. Cancer treatment wasn't exactly in my budget. "Don't call us if she doesn't make it," I heard Dad tell Maria as they prepared to wheel me into surgery. His voice carried that same tone he used when discussing failed investments. "Just send the bill to the funeral home directly." The door to the operating room swung shut behind me, and I was alone with the medical team. But emotionally, I'd been alone for much longer than that. When I woke up in recovery 6 hours later, the first thing I felt wasn't pain from the incision. It was rage. Pure, molten fury that started in my chest and spread through my entire body like wildfire. The second thing I noticed was Maria sitting beside my bed, her kind eyes filled with sympathy. "How are you feeling, mija?" "Like I want to burn the whole world down," I whispered, my voice hoarse from the breathing tube. She squeezed my hand. "They didn't call, not once." I already knew, but hearing it confirmed made something crystallize inside me. I reached for my phone with trembling fingers and opened Instagram. The first post in my feed was from Blair, a carousel of photos showing her twirling in various wedding dresses at the most expensive bridal boutique in the city. The caption read, "Perfect day choosing the perfect dress for my perfect life. Can't wait to marry my soulmate Carter Prescott. Some people bring drama, but I choose to focus on blessings." Engaged. Life. Prescott. Wedding. #living my best life. The comments were even worse. Mom had written, "My beautiful daughter deserves everything wonderful in life, without being dragged down by negativity and toxic energy." I screenshotted everything. The next few days passed in a blur of pain medication and planning. Not planning for my recovery, but planning for justice. I wasn't going to scream or cry or beg them to love me. I was going to show them exactly who they'd decided to throw away. First, I called my insurance company and requested copies of all documentation. The customer service representative was sympathetic when I explained I needed records for family planning purposes. The documents showed that Dad had indeed canceled my coverage effective the day of my surgery. He'd even selected the option for immediate termination due to lifestyle incompatibility with family values. Lifestyle incompatibility. Cancer was apparently a lifestyle choice. Next, I reached out to Maria. She was hesitant at first, but when I explained what I needed, her protective instincts kicked in. She'd been a nurse for 15 years and had never seen a family abandon someone so completely during a medical crisis. "I'll write down everything I remember," she told me, her accent thick with emotion. "Every word they said, every expression on their faces. Nobody should treat their child like that." I spent hours screenshotting social media posts. Blair had documented their entire day shopping, dining at expensive restaurants, and celebrating the engagement while I was fighting for my life. The timestamps were damning. While I was in surgery, they were having champagne at a rooftop restaurant. While I was in recovery, they were at a spa getting facials. But the most valuable evidence came by accident. A week after my surgery, Mom and Blair came to my apartment. Not to check on me, but to collect some family heirloom jewelry that Blair wanted to wear for her engagement photos. "I don't think these earrings are doing you any good just sitting in your jewelry box," Mom said, rifling through my bedroom dresser like she owned the place. "Blair can actually wear them to social events." I pretended to be drowsy from pain medication while secretly recording on my phone. "She looks terrible," Blair whispered to Mom, not caring that I was right there. "Like, seriously sick. Don't let her come to the engagement party looking like death warmed over. It'll ruin all my photos." "The medical bills are astronomical," Mom replied. "Money that should be going toward your wedding is being wasted on her treatments. I told your father we should have just let nature take its course." Let nature take its course. They were talking about letting me die. "She's always been the dramatic one," Blair continued, holding up my grandmother's pearl earrings to her ears in my bedroom mirror. "Even as kids, she had to make everything about herself. Getting sick right during my engagement is just so typical." I had enough evidence to destroy them, but I needed the perfect moment. That moment came 3 weeks later in the form of an elegant cream-colored invitation with gold embossing. "The Blackwood and Prescott families cordially invite you to celebrate the engagement of Blair Elizabeth Blackwood to Carter James Prescott III at the Metropolitan Country Club." The Metropolitan was old money central, the kind of place where deals worth millions were made over golf and where reputation was everything. It was perfect. I spent 2 weeks preparing. First, I hired a private investigator to dig up every detail about the business merger between Dad's real estate company and the Prescott family's investment firm. Turns out, Dad's company was in deeper financial trouble than anyone knew. The marriage wasn't just about love, it was a business transaction designed to save his failing empire. Then I called my college roommate Jessica, who worked in digital media. "I need you to help me create a presentation," I told her. "Something that will ruin lives." "Are you sure about this?" she asked after I explained the situation. "Once you do this, there's no going back." "There was no going back the moment they walked out of that hospital," I replied. Jessica was a wizard with technology. Together, we created a multimedia presentation that would make corporate whistleblowers jealous. Every piece of evidence was organized, time-stamped, and verified. We even hired a professional voice actor to read Mom and Blair's most damning quotes with perfect dramatic timing. The night of the engagement party, I dressed carefully. Not in something flashy or attention-grabbing, But in a simple black dress that emphasized how much weight I'd lost during treatment. I wanted to look like exactly what I was, a cancer survivor who'd been abandoned by her family. The Metropolitan Country Club was decorated like something out of a fairy tale. White roses and gold accents everywhere, string quartet playing softly in the corner, champagne flowing freely among the 100 or so guests who represented the cream of local society. Dad's business partners were there, Mom's charitable organization friends, and the entire Prescott family, including the patriarch, James Prescott Jr., who controlled one of the city's largest investment firms. I waited in the back of the room as Dad took the microphone for his toast. "Family is everything," he began, his voice carrying across the room with practiced ease. "The bonds between parent and child, between siblings, are sacred. They sustain us through life's greatest challenges and celebrations." The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. Tonight, we celebrate not just the union of two young people in love, but the joining of two families who understand the importance of loyalty, support, and unconditional love. That was my cue. I walked slowly toward the front of the room, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. Conversations died as people recognized me. I looked different enough from my treatment that some guests didn't immediately place me, but the family resemblance was unmistakable. "What a beautiful speech about family loyalty, Dad," I said, my voice cutting through the silence. "May I borrow the microphone for just a moment?" His face went white, then red, then white again. Mom looked like she'd seen a ghost. Blair was frantically trying to signal security, but I was already walking up the steps to the small stage. "Thank you all for coming tonight to celebrate love and family," I began, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "I'm Tahlia, the sister who couldn't be here earlier due to some health issues." I nodded to Jessica, who was positioned near the AV equipment. The large screen behind me suddenly illuminated with the first slide, my hospital bracelet next to a timestamp showing the exact moment of my surgery. 3 weeks ago, I had surgery to remove a cancerous tumor. It's been quite a journey, and I learned so much about the true meaning of family during this time. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Blair was trying to leave the stage, but Carter's mother, Victoria Prescott, had grabbed her arm and was whispering something fierce in her ear. "Let me share some of that journey with you." The second slide appeared. The hospital document showing my emergency contact information marked as "Family declined to provide contact details." A collective gasp went through the room. "This is my medical record from surgery day. As you can see, my loving family was too busy to even provide contact information to the hospital staff." The third slide was a split screen, a timestamp of my surgery on the left, and Blair's Instagram stories from that same day on the right. The contrast was devastating. While I was fighting for my life, she was getting a manicure and posting about her perfect day. "But family priorities are important," I continued conversationally, as if discussing the weather. "Weddings are expensive, and medical bills can be such a burden." The fourth slide showed the insurance cancellation notice, with Dad's signature clearly visible and the notation about lifestyle incompatibility. Victoria Prescott stood up abruptly, her face a mask of disgust. "James," she hissed to her husband, "what kind of people are we associating with?" But the most educational part of my journey was learning what my family really thinks of me. I'd like to share some of their wisdom with you. I nodded to Jessica again, and suddenly the room filled with Blair's recorded voice. "God, can she hurry up with this whole thing? I don't want her dying in there and ruining my day." The silence was deafening. Then Mom's voice. "The medical bills are astronomical. Money that should be going toward your wedding is being wasted on her treatments. I told your father we should have just let nature take its course." And finally, the crown jewel. Dad's voice telling the nurse, "Don't call us if she doesn't make it. Just send the bill to the funeral home directly." The room erupted. Not in applause, but in horrified whispers and the sound of chairs scraping as people stood up to leave. Victoria Prescott was already pulling Carter away from Blair, who was sobbing and trying to explain. This is fake, Blair screamed. She's making this all up because she's jealous. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone. I have video from your little visit to my apartment last week, too. Would you like me to play the part where you called me death warmed over and said I'd ruin your photos? James Prescott Jr. approached the stage with murder in his eyes, but not for me. He looked at my father with complete contempt. Richard, this partnership is terminated, effective immediately. The Prescott family does not associate with people who abandon their children to die. Carter, we're leaving. Now. But Dad, Carter started. Now. The exodus began immediately. Dad's business partners filed out without a word. Mom's charitable organization friends couldn't distance themselves fast enough. Within 20 minutes, the room was nearly empty except for catering staff and our family. I stepped down from the stage and walked toward the exit, but Blair grabbed my arm. You've ruined everything, she sobbed. My wedding, my life, everything. I looked at her for a long moment. This woman who shared my DNA, but had never shared my struggles or my triumphs. No, Blair, I didn't ruin your life. I just showed everyone who you really are. The difference is, I can live with who I am. I walked out of that country club and never looked back. The fallout was swift and brutal. By the next morning, #Metropolitan Meltdown was trending on social media. Someone had live-streamed parts of my presentation, and it went viral within hours. The local news picked it up, then regional, then national. Dad's real estate company collapsed within a month as investors and clients fled. The Prescott merger was dead, and without it, his over-leveraged properties went into foreclosure one by one. Mom was quietly asked to resign from her positions on various charity boards. Turns out, abandoning your cancer-stricken daughter doesn't look good for organizations focused on helping families in crisis. Blair became a social pariah overnight. Her friends abandoned her almost as quickly as she'd abandoned me. Carter, despite everything, actually reached out to her once, but his mother threatened to disinherit him if he had any contact with our family. They lost the house 6 weeks later. The mansion I'd grown up in, with its perfectly manicured gardens and imported marble foyers, was sold to pay debts. They moved into a small apartment across town, and suddenly discovered what it felt like to worry about medical bills and grocery money. But something beautiful happened in the aftermath of my revenge. The video of my presentation reached Dr. Sarah Chen, an oncologist who'd been trying to establish a support network for young cancer patients with inadequate family support. She reached out to me the day after the story went national. What you did took incredible courage, she told me over coffee. But more than that, it's going to help so many other people who are fighting battles without family support. Dr. Sai Chen introduced me to other survivors who'd experienced family abandonment during their medical crises. I learned that my experience wasn't as rare as I'd thought. Families sometimes fracture under the stress of serious illness, and it's often the sick family member who gets blamed for the disruption. Together, we started the Phoenix Project, a nonprofit organization providing emotional and financial support to young adults battling serious illnesses without family backing. The name came from something Dr. Chen said. Sometimes you have to burn your old life to ashes before you can rise as something stronger. The initial funding came from an unexpected source. Victoria Prescott, apparently feeling guilty about her family's role in the entire debacle, made a substantial donation. What happened to you was unconscionable, she wrote in her check memo. I hope this helps other families avoid such cruelty. Within 6 months, the Phoenix Project had helped 43 people navigate medical crises without family support. We provided everything from financial assistance to emotional counseling to practical help, like transportation to appointments and meal preparation during treatment. Maria became our first volunteer coordinator. She'd been so moved by everything that happened that she started working part-time with us while maintaining her hospital job. You turned your pain into purpose, Mija, she told me one day as we sorted through donation letters. That takes a special kind of strength. My own cancer treatment continued, but now I had a real family supporting me. Not people who shared my blood, but people who shared my values and my struggles. When I had my neck surgery, 12 people from the Phoenix Project showed up to wait with me. When I finished my last round of chemotherapy, they threw me a celebration party that meant more than any birthday party my biological family had ever given me. The weird part was that I started getting messages from my parents and Blair about 6 months after everything imploded. They'd lost their house, Dad's business was gone, and suddenly they wanted to reconcile. "We've learned from our mistakes," Mom wrote in a carefully worded email. "Perhaps we can all heal together as a family." Blair was more direct. "I know you're making good money with that charity thing now. Maybe you could help us get back on our feet?" Even Dad, who'd never apologized for anything in his life, sent a stilted message about family bonds being tested but not broken, and suggesting that bygones should be bygones for everyone's benefit. I deleted every message without responding. Some people thought I was being vindictive or unforgiving. A few news commentators suggested that I should show Christian mercy and reconcile with my family. But I'd learned something important during my recovery. Forgiveness doesn't require putting yourself back into a harmful situation. I could forgive them for being selfish, shallow people who prioritized money and social status over their daughter's life. I could understand that they were products of their own upbringing and societal pressures. But forgiveness didn't mean I had to let them hurt me again. A year after the engagement party debacle, I was invited to speak at the National Young Adult Cancer Alliance conference. The auditorium was packed with survivors, families, and medical professionals. "The hardest part about cancer isn't the physical pain," I told them, standing at the podium where I'd once felt so powerless. "It's discovering who truly loves you and who only loves the idea of you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from." I looked out at the audience and saw Maria in the third row, beaming with pride. Jessica was there too, along with Dr. Chen and dozens of Phoenix Project volunteers and beneficiaries. But here's what I learned. Family isn't about DNA. It's about showing up. It's about holding someone's hand in their darkest moment and staying there until the light comes back. It's about celebrating victories and sharing burdens, and never, ever making someone feel like their struggle is an inconvenience. The standing ovation lasted 4 minutes. After the conference, I drove past my old neighborhood on the way home. The house I'd grown up in looked different with new owners. They'd painted it yellow instead of white and had planted wildflowers in Mom's former pristine rose garden. There were children's bikes on the front lawn and a dog sleeping on the porch. It looked happy. I didn't feel sad seeing it anymore. I felt grateful. Grateful that I'd learned who I really was when everything was stripped away. Grateful for every person who'd shown me real love during my darkest time. Grateful even for the pain, because it had taught me what I was capable of surviving. My phone buzzed with a text from Dr. Chen. "Phoenix Project just got approved for the Miller Foundation grant. We can help 200 more people this year." I smiled and put the car in drive. I had work to do. That evening, I sat in my small but comfortable apartment, surrounded by thank you letters from Phoenix Project beneficiaries, looking out at a sunset that painted the sky in shades of gold and pink. My cancer was in remission. My organization was thriving, and I was surrounded by people who'd chosen to love me. I picked up a framed photo from my coffee table. It was from last month's Phoenix Project fundraiser, showing me surrounded by our volunteers and the families we'd helped. Maria had her arm around my shoulders, Dr. Chen was laughing at something someone had said, and Jessica was making bunny ears behind my head. These were my people. This was my family. Real strength isn't about never falling down. It's about choosing how you get back up. And sometimes, to rise like a phoenix, you have to be willing to burn your old world to ashes and build something entirely new from the flames. They say blood is thicker than water, but I've learned that the full quote is, "The blood of the covenant is thicker than the water of the womb." The bonds you choose are stronger than the bonds you're born into. And sometimes the family that finds you is worth more than the family that loses you.